What has parents looking for alternative education opportunities for their children? Well, let's start with that first question we had up on the chalkboard. How are we doing? I asked you before the break. What number would you guess the United States ranks in world rankings on education? Good old US of A, right? American exceptionalism, surely we're number one. Let me put it up and show you. These just came out a few weeks ago. This is the performance standards across the world. As you can see, not number one, number 36, at least in math. You can see there's Shanghai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea. There's your top five. Reading, not much better, 24th in the world. Science, 28th in the world. That's how we're doing. Officially, that is below average. Now, joining me now is Cara Kerwin. She's president of the Center for Education Reform. Also joining me is Kyle Olson. He's the founder and CEO of eagnews.org and author of Indoctrination, How Useful Idiots Are Using Our Schools to Subvert American Exceptionalism. There you go, talking about American exceptionalism.
That's right.
Not number one.
No, we're not.
Number 36. Cara, is this, let me start with kind of an obvious question. Is this acceptable?
Absolutely not. We can no longer afford to let our children fail. And it gets even worse, Will, because if you look at our nation's report card, only 34% of our 8th graders can read or do math at proficiency.
34%.
And that is comparing them among their peers here in the United States. So it's not even, it's become an economic and global crisis for the United States.
And unfortunately, Cara, there's seemingly not a silver lining. We could ask ourselves, okay, we're ranked 34th, 24th, 28th, depending on the category, but are we getting better? And the answer to that is no. Let me show you another chart that shows how the United States is comparing to other countries across the world as far as just making gains year over year. And what you can see is, I mean, you guys can see it here as well, Latvia, Chile, Brazil, Portugal, those are your top fives on year over year growth. The United States, again, all the way down at 25th. We're just not doing better.
No.
We're stuck down here in the 20s. Now, so, Kyle, I want to ask you this. First of all, okay, we've established there's a huge problem. How do we go about fixing it? Now, Bob Bowden's made a film called The Cartel, and he's going to be on the show a little later to talk about this. But one of the first things people say is, all right, we need to invest in education. And when you ask people they say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. In fact, let's watch this clip. And obviously, that's what people say. Yes, invest in education.
Should the number one spending state and the number one spending country be paying even more for its schools?
Definitely. I mean, the people that go to school are the ones who are going to run this country in the future, so I believe it's really, really important.
Really, I think they should spend more on the classrooms, like on the kids and stuff like that.
Yes, definite. I work in the school and I know.
It seems intuitive.
That's
if
right.
we are lacking at something, invest in it.
That's right. And that's a popular word. But the trouble is we've been investing more and more each year, but we're not seeing the returns. And I think one of the biggest reasons that we're not seeing the returns is because it's an adult-focused system. And what happens is the politicians, the school boards, everyone wants to focus on the inputs and not the outputs. And so what they're saying is we need to spend more money each year. If we do that, then we're able to raise those test scores, we're able to raise graduation rates, those sorts of things. But the reality is that's not happening.
Let me just illustrate exactly what you're talking about, Kyle. Let's put up how much the United States has increased education spending over the last 30, 40 years. And what you can see is we've steadily increased education spending. I mean, doubled education spending since the 1970s. And you can see the bottom line, the flat lines. That's our testing scores remaining stagnant. I mean, Arne Duncan, education secretary right now, said this is education stagnation. In fact, let me do this as well. I want to put one more chart. I'm going to kill you guys with charts, but invest. Should we spend more? Well, we saw the rankings on where we are compared to other countries, and this is where we are on how much we spend per kid. As you can see, we're way ahead. We're number one in the world. We're ahead of Switzerland, Norway, Denmark, Austria. We seem to be investing. This doesn't appear to be the problem.
36th? I don't think we're getting what we're spending our money on. We're not getting the return on investment, really, with more spending.
What about class size? We hear that argument a lot. One of the things that investing will buy us is more teachers. More teachers means smaller class sizes.
Right.
Classrooms with 15, 20 kids perform better than classrooms with 40 kids.
And again, that's something that a lot of people would say, yeah, that makes sense. But when you have an effective teacher, it doesn't matter what the class size is, because an effective teacher knows how to educate students. They know how to manage a classroom. They know what should be done at the appropriate time and those sorts of things. And so really class size doesn't matter. Again, what should be focused on is how do we get to a place where we have an effective teacher in front of every child in America? And the system, unfortunately, is not getting us there, because what we've had for years...
Why do we not have effective teachers in front of every child in America?
Because what has been happening is tenure has been created. Seniority is a system where teachers are kept in the classroom simply because of how long they've been there, not because of their effectiveness. And so we have all of these HR policies in schools that are in the interest of the adults, but not in the interest of quality education and what's in the best interest of students.
You're focusing on teachers union, something we want to talk about. But before we do that, I want to focus in on these rankings. I think it's fascinating to compare where the United States is as compared against how much we're spending. Are there other things, Cara, to explain why the United States is not keeping up? I mean, people point out, well, the United States has high rates of poverty in some areas, and those schools in poverty-stricken areas do not perform as well. We're a big country. We're 300+ million people, where some of these are really small countries. Are there other reasons to explain? I asked you if it's acceptable. You said no. But it can be explained away?
Absolutely not. And we make a lot of excuses. It's the adults making excuses because they can't perform and they can't get it done. In fact, the American public is really tired of it. There is not one issue that 86% of Americans can agree with. And in education, they believe that schools and teachers should be held accountable. 86% of Americans, according to a recent poll by the Center for Education Reform, state that they think schools should be able to fire poorly performing teachers. We're not holding them accountable, and so it's not even stagnation. We are decreasing, and you know, a couple weeks ago they released the NAEP scores, and they called it encouraging. We haven't moved. You know, a couple weeks later they released the PISA scores, and they call it stagnation. It's not even stagnation. We're going backwards.
Okay, so we've begun to answer our first question on the chalkboard, which is how are we doing? And the answer clearly is not well. You two have focused on teachers. But what I want to do when we come back is I want to talk about if money isn't the problem, what is and who is doing it well? There are schools out there that are defying these statistics, and let's focus on those when we come back.
We've got to think of some other solutions, because throwing money at the problem isn't working, and that as an option is coming to an end. So there's almost a sense of the worse we do, the more money we get.
If anybody can tell me that all of the billions of dollars that we have spent in Camden has made one bit of difference in the lives of those kids, they're lying to you.